Fear is the greatest enemy of creativity. When you are afraid that you're going to make a mistake, you're afraid that it's not going to be good enough, you're afraid that you're going to waste your supplies, you're afraid of whatever it may be, is going to hinder your ability to be creative. So in this video, we're going to talk about fear a little bit, and I'm going to try my best to help you to see that when you're painting, when you're creating something, there's no need to be fearful in any shape, form, or fashion. So, first of all, when we are creating, usually the fear that we feel comes from something in the past. Maybe it was a harsh criticism by someone. Maybe it's just self-inflicted. Maybe it's something that you're a perfectionist and you feel like you can't do it unless it's going to be perfect. Maybe it is an expectation that you have of yourself of getting something done in a perfect way the first time. What is reality is that there's nothing that you can make that is going to be perfect the first time you try it. Think about babies, for example. The first time a baby tries to walk, they're not going to do it, right? They're going to fall down several times and they're going to get back up and they're going to keep trying until they get really good at it. With anything that we do that involves skill of any kind, it's going to take practice. And when I say practice, that means that you're going to have to do things over and over again, and you're going to have to make mistakes while you're doing those things so that you learn what not to do. So when the fear comes in, what you need to do is remind yourself that you're just playing. Just pretend when you get out your canvas. We're going to use this big canvas back here as an example in just a minute. But when you are painting, when you're getting ready to make something, go into it with the idea that this is just for fun. This is just play, and it's okay to make mistakes. All of these things that you're going to be doing are learning experiences. Don't think of them as if this has to be done exactly right the first time or I'm a failure, because that's not how it works. You've got to put out a lot of paintings. You've got to put in a lot of time, a lot of practice to really get to a point where you feel like what you're doing is good. And it's not something that's going to happen overnight. So you need to go into it with the idea that you know you're going to make mistakes, and go into it with the idea that if you do make a mistake, it's a learning experience. It's experimental. That's what makes art so exciting and fun, because every time you sit down or stand up at an easel to get started on something, you should remind yourself and know that this is just going to be an experiment. You may not know exactly what's going to happen when you start creating. So you've got to free your mind from this idea that you're going to have a perfect outcome every time you paint. I don't know how many paintings I have in sketchbooks or on canvas stacked up in different places here in my studio that were experiments, that are not things that I show everybody, because they were just it's just something that I was playing with to see what would happen. So you've got to allow yourself to do that. You've also got to free your mind of the fear of criticism, because if you paint something and you show it to someone, you've got to know that not everybody is going to like the same things. So if you show your work to someone and they criticize it harshly, or they have an opinion about it that is not very nice, you've got to be open to that criticism in a way that you don't let it affect you. You don't let it make you stop creating more things. If it's something that you really like yourself and you enjoy creating, if someone else doesn't like it, then that's okay. They don't have to make it. They don't have to buy it. They don't have to look at it. But if you like it, then that's all that matters, because you are the one that's creating it. Okay, so free your mind from that fear of criticism. Another thing that really hinders people is the fear of being wasteful with your supplies. And I was like this to begin with because honestly, art supplies are not cheap. However, it would be better for you to buy the cheapest set of paint and brushes and just paint on cardboard and play and practice things until you feel comfortable than to go and buy, a really expensive set of paints and brushes and large canvases and things like that, if that's going to hinder you from trying things and being creative. So don't play with a stingy mindset, with the idea that these things that you have can't be used and you want to save every little drop of it possible, because that's going to keep you from being as creative as you can be. Another thing to keep in mind is don't restrict yourself in any way. Don't say, okay, I'm going to paint, but I'm only going to use watercolor, or I'm going to start trying to just use a palette knife and no brushes, or I only use brushes, or I don't use collage elements, or whatever it may be. Don't restrict yourself to just a few things, a few supplies. So we are going to not even have the word fear in our vocabulary when it comes to art. There are no mistakes. Everything is an experiment. You're learning as you go. Everything that you try is going to make you better the next time. If you make a mistake, we don't have mistakes, but if you do something that you don't like, you can paint over that. That is the beauty of paint. If you paint an entire painting and you don't like it, you can just gesso over that whole thing and start again. And that's what I have behind me right here. This is the example that I want to show you. This is a very large canvas, very large. I believe it is 36 by 36. So it's an expensive canvas, right? But it had a cow painted on it at one time. It had an abstract landscape painted on it at one time. And now I've put gesso over it, and I put down a little bit of raw umber because I'm going to redo this and I'm going to start over and start something else. So let this be what comes to your mind when you start thinking about fear and making mistakes and wasting paint or wasting your supplies or criticism or anything that stops you from being creative. Because, number one, you can start over again. You can start with a white canvas all over again. Number two, everything that you do is going to make you better the next time. So if you do something that you don't like, then you can paint over it and you know what not to do next time. And be generous with your supplies. Don't go to the canvas with an idea of what some people would call a poverty mindset when it comes to your art supplies. You don't want to think of this as these things are too precious for me to use. It's the opposite. If you don't use the paint, then it's wasted. This is no good to anyone if it's not used to make something. So what's going to happen to your paint if you don't use it? It's going to dry up. It's going to be thrown away. So think about it that way. Instead of, I don't want to use this because it costs so much money, you need to think about it like this. I need to use this up because it costs so much money. Okay, so I hope that helps somebody with their idea of wasting paint, because there is no wasted paint unless it stays right here in this tube.